Hello everybody, welcome again to Localite. John Compton here, and today we are discussing Maryhill Museum. Maryhill Museum is one of those places, one of those rare places that's really magical actually. And here with me is Colleen Schafroth, and she's the director, and she's going to tell us all about the museum. So Colleen, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. Been looking forward to learning. I know there's all kinds of things going on, but I want to start with when Sam Hill built it, it was not a museum. He built it as a home. And it's a very extravagant home, but this was also not his first home. This was just a country home.
That's correct.
So tell me a bit about that.
Well, he came out actually to the Pacific Northwest at the turn of the century. He originally wanted to settle in the Seattle area. And while he was up there, he began to think about a place to live. And he became fascinated with the Columbia River Gorge. And oddly enough, one of his cohorts brought him some grapes right from down along the river and suggested it would be a really great place to have a ranch and a farm. And so he came down and just immediately and completely fell in love with the beauty of the area, the elegance of the sunrises. He called it God's country. It seemed to stretch on forever. And so he began to purchase property about 1907. First piece was purchased, which is the site where Maryhill is today. And then he began over the next few years to continue to add to that property until he had some 5,300 acres. So his whole hope was to have a ranch house, a farming community, and to eventually open it to his Quaker friends. Sam was a Quaker. And so he was thinking of having a Quaker farming community right there along the bluffs of the Columbia. Okay.
Yeah, I read somewhere where he actually referred to it as, I want to say like the Garden of Eden.
Yes, exactly.
Paradise or something like
he wrote,
that.
I think it was to his brother. He wrote that he and a cousin or a cousin had gone on up to almost the top of Haystack Butte, I think it was, which is the largest mountain hill right outside Maryhill. And he just was totally blown away by the beauty of the region and wrote to his cousin that how beautiful it really was and that it was almost like living in paradise.
Yeah, well, it still is. I mean, you still go out there and it's breathtaking. I mean, you can see Mount Hood and you can see the river down there and the rolling hills, and landscape's changed a little bit. We won't get into that, but it is still an amazingly beautiful place. When he built it, he didn't actually finish it though.
No, he was actually building his ranch house. I think he wanted a place where he could bring his friends. He could wow them with the scenery, the surrounding gorge. And you have to remember at the time, well, Celilo Falls was still there, so there would have been this tremendous noise and energy that the river gave off. Now today it seems so much more serene, but there would have been this tremendous noise, this tremendous excitement, and he wanted people to come and be absolutely awed by it.
That real Wild West kind of experience.
Exactly. So he had this whole building built with that in mind, I think. And oddly enough, while he wanted them to have this Wild West sort of experience, he wanted them to have it in lavish comfort. And so the ranch house he built is 3 stories, and there were sleeping porches on the roof, but elevators to get people to and fro, and of course garages, which are the 2 rotundas today where he could house quite a few cars. So he really intended people to travel there.
Right. And I've noticed on both ends of the museum there's actually what almost look like ramps, and it's my understanding he would drive his cars inside?
Well,
or something?
He didn't make a habit of that, but he did intend people to drive up the ramps and circle around, and then they could, let people out and then drive down, and then they would enter the garages from down below to park the cars. But for Queen Marie, when she came in 1926 to dedicate it as a museum, I understand the car actually drove through the doors. And so in some ways, yes, he thought they would drive through those one doors and then out through the other doors. But I think it was only for special occasions, not an everyday sort of occurrence.
Yeah. I guess, when you think about it, those, roundabouts or whatever are pretty narrow, but back then we didn't have the cars that we have today. They were very narrow, so that would make sense to be able to drive up, drop off at the front door, sort of a thing, and then continue on down.
Yeah, Model Ts, maybe his Locomobile, which would have been a little longer. A Locomobile was a very fancy, high-end car of the day, and he loved them.
Okay. And he was an avid car collector?
I don't know if you could call him a collector, but he loved cars. He certainly had a couple of them, and he certainly was interested in building roads all through the Northwest in order to drive those cars over them.
Wouldn't that be nice? I want to go over there. I think I'll just have a road built.
There you go. He was a bit of a road builder, Sam Hill. He belonged to the Automobile Association, the Washington Auto Association, the Oregon Auto Association. He worked on the historic Columbia River Highway. Well, we call it historic today, but then it was the Columbia River Highway.
Right.
He worked on the Pacific Highway, which became I-5 actually today, more or less. And then he worked on the highway going through Biggs. So,
Highway 97.
That's right, Highway 97.
Yes.
And so it was kind of like a giant H, I like to say, across the landscape. He was building an H, but he really did. His intent was to get farmers access to the city, farmers access to get their goods to market, to get the city folks out to the country for their souls.
Love it.
To inspire their souls.
Yeah. And it still does that today.
It does.
Well, we're going to be right back, but when we do come back, I want to ask you a bit about the Maryhill Loops.
Okie doke.
Because I know that is still utilized today and a fun thing. And then also when the the mansion became a museum.
Okie doke.
So we will carry on the conversation here in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're discussing Maryhill on Localite.